Hey everybody, welcome to the Faith and Fandom Podcast, Artists Adventure Aftermath. Because I wasn't behind a table for a weekend, I was in another state slash country for almost a week. And lots went on, and going to take some time to tell you about it while I'm sketching some sketches and coloring some stuff for Heroes Con. So this is going to be a chunky one. You might need to break it up a couple times. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about my adventure to North Dakota and all that went on with that. First off, this adventure took place because of the generosity and gracefulness of my friend Zach Harris, and who's one of our long-term Patreon supporters, and the church he is the pastor of, First Lutheran Church in Williston, North Dakota. And Zach, first off, is one of the people who, in a lot of ways, has kind of pioneered a lot of things in terms of geek ministry in the first place. There's stuff that he's done before I've done it. And, like, for instance, doing Comic-Cons at church. Zach did a few before I had ever done one. And, in fact, I attended 2 of them and learned a lot from both experiences with that. And so Zach's kind of been a trailblazer with those type of things. But Zach was in Williston, North Carolina for a hot minute, and then got transferred, shipped, deployed, whatever the word is, to Alaska and then North Dakota. And so he's been there for a little bit, and somewhere in the conversation he decided to bring up the idea, whatever, of doing a nerd-themed VBS, and voila. The rest is what went down. I remember, I don't know if he sent me a text or whatever, or when the conversation started, but I do remember being on the floor of GalaxyCon Richmond and calling him because the topic started being discussed. I think maybe that's when he pitched it, was when I was at GalaxyCon Richmond. It's been a minute, y'all. But I remember calling him from the floor because I don't have many free dates during the summer in the first place, and if he was trying to get something done this summer, I was going to need to put that on lock real fast. And so called him, worked out the details of just saying, hey, we'll check back after Easter. And then we totally didn't check back after Easter. We ended up checking back like much later, almost to the middle of May or early parts of May. And to the point that, we talked about ideas, but I was like, oh, this is probably not happening. And so actually the last time I called him, was calling him to say, hey, I got a worship offer. Just wanted to make sure we weren't doing this camp thing, this VBS. And he's like, oh no, we're on. So moved forward with that and booked the flights, planned the stuff, planned what lessons we were going to do, because his church and volunteers were going to go pretty gangster on all of the decorations and preparations for it. And we ended up choosing to do day 1 was going to be Captain America and his shield. Also do a little bit of Captain Carter type stuff with it. But basically it was going to be a younger version of the Captain America Unrelenting Shield chapter from book 2, which is kind of based on Captain America the Winter Soldier. And then day 2 was going to be Spider-Man. And we were going to do the Spider-Verse folks and kind of the Into the Spider-Verse chapter from book 6. Then day 3 was going to be the Green Lanterns and the Lantern Corps and the emotional spectrum, and was going to be centered on the chapter from book 1. And then the last day of the actual thing was going to be focused on a Bat family chapter that I was going to put together. Because realistically speaking, I fully recognize that having, this is just a wisdom looking back type situation. The chapter from book 1, deals with the fact that we're all kind of spiritual orphans, but realizing now in retrospect, having a chapter called Broken Orphans Striving for Redemption in book 1 was pretty hardcore, but leaving the title the same and not editing down some of the content of it for the kids book, I probably should have watered that down a little bit, because being an orphan is probably a sad thought to a kid just reading a random Bible study. But I digress. That ship long sailed, because Junior has probably gone out there more than almost any book. But lessons learned for the future. So that was going to be kind of the game plan overall for the lessons. And so it all came together in terms of the planning and their prep stuff and everything like that. And about the week before, I called and made sure that I could had the right songs that they wanted. And because you guys know, maybe you do know, that if you are involved in different churches or across church boundaries, that there are some songs that certain denominations and certain churches don't want to do because of other churches, and they get real saucy in the paint on stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing what they wanted and giving them stuff they were appropriate with, but also trying to make it as fun for the kids as possible. So planned the worship set, planned the messages, made the PowerPoints, all that jazz. Prior to me going up there, they ordered 100 copies of Junior and 100 copies of Can I Still Wear My Cape that they were going to be giving out to the kids and the attenders. And if you're saying, oh, dude, that's a lot of money, they provided for me well. But on that note, the books were sold directly at publisher cost. So that wasn't just stacks on stacks of book money or anything right there. Because I wanted them to be able to give it to the kids as cheap as possible, which made for a really cool experience. And we'll talk about that. But yeah, all that stuff kind of played out, and got to go and do this and be part of it. I flew out to North Dakota from Raleigh, and right before I was flying out, literally I was flying out on Monday morning. That Friday I went to go get my car inspected, and my car did not pass inspection, and so my car was stranded, and all the expenses and stuff that were going to come with that, and trying to get it to pass inspection later. And so my car was stranded, and long Sunday at church, preached, did all the things, but finally got on the plane, went to Raleigh, and it was just typical airport travel if you've been involved in much of that nature or anything like that. Nothing super crazy, but it was a good experience. My first flight, and I'll be super real with you guys too. I struggle with the idea of flying most times because I'm a big boy, and planes are not the most forgiving when it comes to terms of space and how comfortable you can feel. And there's nothing I feel like causes me more anxiety than feeling like I am being judged by my appearance, and like the literal petrifying fear of, oh no, what if I can't buckle my seatbelt? Like, that's literally kind of a petrifying fear that I get. And let me fully say, I could buckle my seatbelt on every flight. God bless you and your family. I will now take calls and questions. No, I could buckle my seatbelt on everything. And, I know that sounds like such a ridiculous statement, but it's a concern. It was a cause of anxiety, and I was really glad that it worked out. Yeah, went through all that. And when I first got on the plane, my seat was next to a dude who was wearing a Stardew Valley hat. And so, complimented that, sat down, and, he played Stardew Valley. And, I had bought 4 graphic novels on my phone for my Kindle, to be able to read, as we were flying. I bought Tom King's, weird and awkward, book, Danger Street, which, as my dear friend Todd Turner stated when I told him I bought it, he said he read it and still doesn't know what happened. And if you were to ask me to give you a genuine synopsis of what happened in that book, I don't know that I could do it either, because it was definitely difficult and weird and awkward. And so, yeah, I don't know what to tell you happened in that book either. But it was not a bad read. It was just not real clear on what was actually happening. So, read Danger Street, all 12 issues of it, and getting there. Or not just in Raleigh, but, across the board. I read Danger Street till I got bored of reading, and the TVs on the plane seats had a lot of really good content, like Marvel movies, sci-fi, superheroes, recent stuff, and from like all of the Guardians movies to Captain America the Winter Soldier to Endgame to Infinity War. I was grateful my flights weren't Endgame or Infinity War long. And yeah, so it was a long journey. Wasn't bad, just, long. And so watched all those movies, didn't get around to it. I watched 4 episodes of The Office. I watched the fun run and hitting Meredith with a car of The Office while I was on the plane. That was cool. And yeah, in a nutshell, that was just kind of the gist of where we were, and flew, and honestly, they brought snacks and all that jazz, and I didn't really pay much attention because I was pretty happy with where things were, and maybe I was just super happy I fit my seatbelt and I stopped caring about almost everything else. Got there to Minneapolis, and their ridiculously long airport that requires a train ride, and went across the train, found my gate where I was going to have to go to next, and just kind of camped out because I had a 3-hour layover. No complaints of that. It was just, it's a long time. And so I had a 3-hour layover, and I did some work for the college that I work with, and just kind of did some graphic design, watched some... Did I watch anything? No, I don't think I watched anything. But did some graphic design and just kind of waited. And then eventually got on the last plane to Williston, North Dakota. And when I got there, what was so crazy was The first thing to notice, I got there at 9:45 their time, which is an hour behind us, so it's Central Time. And the sun was still out. Like, I got there at 9:45 p.m. and the sun was out. And I just kind of literally stood there at the airport window and was like really confused of what was happening. And apparently that's a thing. The sun does not go down there during the spring/summer time very much. I was told that the sun is up 17 hours a day in Williston, North Dakota, which is just not stuff I was prepared for. And it definitely threw off my sleep schedule, and it definitely gave me insomnia one night. And I think I would go mad if that was like what my life was like on a consistent basis of having that much sunshine all the time. But yeah, it was good, great experience, getting there and everything, but that definitely threw me for a loop. And so, my friend Zach picked me up, and then on one of the first things, as we were driving through, literally about a block from the airport, I noticed that there was a ball of fire in the air, like above the ground, like let's say 40 feet above the ground, just a straight up ball of fire. And it's just one of those things of like, oh, did I just walk into an apocalyptic scenario? Is this like Mad Max? What's going on? And he explained to me that a lot around the area is like a lot of the commerce, a lot of the workers, a lot of the life is oil rigs. And that every so far they have to burn off the oil in the air. And I don't know that I've ever been around oil rigs like that. I know I've like driven through Texas once or something, but like it's just not something I recall being part of my memory bank. And like literally it's every 500 yards there's a pillar of fire. And he mentioned it, and before I could even process it, that it legitimately looks like Gondor calling for aid. Like the beacons are lit. It straight up looks like Lord of the Rings is happening in front of you. Like I'm expecting to see a stampede of orcs in any direction. Like Gandalf is going to come over the hill on the third day. Like it's literally that kind of party. And yeah, it was bonkers. And so that's just a consistent thing. Anytime, day or night, you can look over in the sky and just see like pillars of fire, just yeehaw cowboy burning in the air. It was cool. If I saw that in my area, I think I would have thought a meth lab was exploding. But there, it totally made sense. And the first thing we did was swing by the church building to check out how things were done. And I'm just say, as a pastor that spends a lot of his time working with and corralling volunteers and stuff, they did an outstanding job of putting volunteers together, of getting people to serve and be connected, because they had an army, y'all. A literal army of people serving, doing these things. And they had a like steep, deep Lutheran sanctuary with like 2 to 3 stories up, and like pipe organs that literally looked like you could have a climactic battle with Daredevil at any given point in time. And it just looked majestic. Now, I spend most of my last decade of ministry working out of a church building that's like a storefront factory type vibe. So like grand, majestic structures like that aren't in my normal wheelhouse. And I was like, for sure, like, man, this is killer. But on top of that, they put an entire cityscape in the background, action figures for days, and it just looked amazing. What they did with it. They had more building than they could decorate, but they definitely decorated their building better than I think we could have anticipated. And yeah, we kind of did that. I did a tech check just because if you work with Pro Presenter or PowerPoints or HDMI cables or anything like that of trying to set up computer displays, it doesn't always work in every scenario. And so we checked it, made sure it was good, and kind of called it a day. Now, at the house where I was staying with Zach was also Lewis Small Jr., who is a pretty renowned artist back from DC, from Marvel, from all the things back in the day. And he was also part of this, where I was providing the teaching and the music. Lewis was providing art and instruction and spending time with the kids to do that stuff, and it was really cool. So, we had our little team of three amigos. But I got in there, checked in, made the last little preps for my lesson, and we went on to it. And hit the ground running. And y'all, they just, first thing Tuesday morning, they came in. Volunteers had breakfast for us, and we just kind of ran with it. And it was a good experience of everything running in. The kids were super excited. We had the leaders had name badges with whistles too. And I had a Pastor Hector badge. And so we set up and ran. And if you've ever been a part of a VBS, it was pretty much VBS. The kids had different stations they went to where they were taught how to draw, where they did crafts. And y'all, the craft team on this was phenomenal. I posted some photos. Make sure if you care, you can check them out. But of some of the crafts and photos and stuff they did. But just some really impressive stuff with it. And so my job for the event was to open up the whole service with music. And one of the songs that I've learned from doing middle school stuff, especially at Ponderosa and Gilead and places, is that Joy by Rend Collective, you can really get kids hooked and involved and really, really just kind of like engulfed with that song if you let them and yeah, that's what I did. I tried to get them involved, tried to get them pretty excited about it, and they turned up and they had a good time. And so we did Joy to kind of kick things off, and then I think we did Mighty to Save or some other worship song with that. And I would start each session off with a couple worship songs, and then we would jump into doing Bible lessons. And I would teach the same Bible lesson 3 times in a row. And that was technically my day in terms of the work of the Bible study time. And so I did it. It went great. And then I was like, okay, now I've got 3 hours until the event ends. And the kids responded really well because the first day was Captain America and walking around with the shield, talking with them, doing all that stuff. It went really well. And so once that was done, I walked outside and put coffee into my GPS and took off walking and playing Pokemon. And it was great. They didn't need me. I was going to come back to close, and I had 3 hours. So I walked down to a local coffee shop, got coffee, explored the town a little bit. And there's a song by Derek Webb called, I think it's called The Ballad of San Francisco, from Caedmon's Call, where he is on tour and he just goes walking around the city and gets lost. And that song was on my mind the whole time. And I didn't sing it or anything, but I was definitely thinking about it while I was walking around. And yeah, walked around, came back, and we closed up and called it a day. Zach was really above and beyond in terms of trying to make sure that we didn't just serve, but that we were also taken care of. And so what we did right after that was we drove a little ways away to a place called the Teddy Roosevelt National Park, to the north unit, and we saw buffalo, and we saw this geological formation called the Cannonball Mystery, which literally looks like cannonballs made of different rocks are sticking out of the mountain, and they're perfectly spherical and round and have actually fallen out and look like real cannonballs but aren't cannonballs. We saw whole herds of buffalo, and we rode around the national park, and we talked, and we looked at nature, and it was cool. And then when all that was said and done, and I made a TikTok out of the buffalo, and it went really well. And we went and got some good food, and we passed the absolute crap out, and went to sleep because we were tired, as we should be. And yeah, we did that. So yeah, it was day one. Day two was very similar. We did the that was the Spider-Man day. We talked about all the different Spider-Man stuff. We just did the comparing it to Moses. And here's the thing: the kids were at times rowdy and hyper and kind of bonkers. And the leaders weren't all fully trained to lead, but guess what? That's what you get with VBS, because it's volunteer leaders and kids who aren't used to those experiences. And so, yeah, was some of that difficult? Sure. Was it my first rodeo? Not in the slightest. Zach frequently complimented my patience dealing with kids versus how he would have dealt with it or other adults would have dealt with it. And that's just, the reality is that is my rodeo. I've worked with kids long enough, especially difficult kids, to be able to just kind of process it and handle it better. And so I was grateful to be able to do that. A reporter for the local paper named Christian came by and talked to Lewis and Zach while we were doing stuff, and somehow an invite to Filipino food got brought up, and when everything was over, we went and got some Filipino food, and yeah. Yeah, we went and ate, and I forget, there was a reason why we were going to go a little bit later, but I think maybe we had like an hour to kill, and I took a nap, we went and ate, and then yeah, we just kind of passed out again. Oh no, that night we watched The Acolyte. We watched the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte. And that was cool to get to do, to sit around with 2 other professional geeks and watch a new Star Wars show for the first time. And, it was a good experience. Then the next day was Green Lantern Day, and the kids had a blast with that. We had rings to pass around. We talked about all the colors. Really a lot of the stuff that's in chapter from book 1, but it was really good and interactive for the kids. And I was grateful for the experience and getting to do it the way that we did it, because they really loved it. One piece that I forgot to mention earlier is that at the end of the first day, the kids all got copies of Faith and Fandom Junior. I explained to them, like, the Bible lesson we did was kind of like something they would find in there, and they were all going to get copies. And Zach insisted that I give them all the chance to get their book signed if they wanted it. So as the kids were getting picked up, like, a line formed for kids to get books signed. And, it's not like every kid got a book signed, but a lot of them got a book signed. And I've signed books before. It's not always my favorite thing to do. But these kids were pretty pumped about it, and it was sweet, and I did enjoy it. for the sake of knowing it meant a lot to them. And I will say it's the most consecutive autographs I've ever signed. And I was putting Matthew 19:14, which is a verse about letting the little children come to Jesus, and like just signed my name, Matthew 19:14, and yeah, it was a lot of just signing all those, which was pretty cool. Then after the second day, I told them that if they brought their books back, because I have about 3 hours of free time each day. After the second day, I told them if they brought their books back, I would sketch whatever they wanted in their books on the front page, and they'd tell me what their favorite thing is. I would sketch it. And so I'd spend a lot of my free time sketching it. Now, also in the free time, was Mariel doing music. Mariel is their worship leader, and he's a young dude with incredible talent and way more skill worship leading as far as like orchestrating big bands, lots of music, everything. And so I would sit around while Mariel was doing music in the auditorium, or the sanctuary, and I would draw whatever these kids were asking for. I definitely also fell asleep in the pews a couple times and other places like the sewing room, and just because I was tired. And this is a draining process, and the sun won't freaking go away. But it was still good in that capacity. Wednesday night, Wednesday night was a little bit different in terms of scheduling and everything, because I was going to also be speaking to the adults. And, Zach had been talking to me the whole days ahead of time. He's like, what are you going to talk to the adults about? I was like, don't know. And he was like making suggestions and everything. And I was just like, I don't know. And I was not winging it, but I was kind of waiting to see what I got, just kind of spiritually vibing off of the adults that I met. And so I went with Acts 17, where Paul walks around the city, sees what they're interested in, and starts kind of bringing Christ into it, and ends up using the unknown God to use it as a way to present the gospel. And then I swung it down in 1 Corinthians 9:22 of how we're called to use what we're given, use wherever we're at to reach people. And I kind of talked to them about what faith and fandom is and why we do what we do, and how they can be uniquely benefited to benefit their communities that way. And then somewhere in the conversation towards the end of it, I was just rambling during questions and answers of, I don't do things well alone. And, that's why it's good to have somebody with you. Because, it's the term body doubling for people that have ADHD is kind of like one of the things that you can accomplish more as long as you're not alone, because it helps you focus. And I was talking about that, and an elderly lady, not elderly, like decrepit or anything, she was just older, spoke up, and she was kind of just touched because she said that it's been harder to clean her home since her husband died, and she living alone, than when she had 5 kids and a husband. And because it's hard for her to get moving when she's alone. And after the message was over, we got together and talked about it for a while. And it was just crazy how a conversation needed to happen that I never would have thought would have happened because of a superhero VBS. And a superhero thing like that. And it was just really cool. And yeah, I just thought that was a neat experience. After Green Lantern Day on Thursday, we made an official pact to not dilly-dally after service was done. And as soon as we dismissed the kids, Lou, Zach, and I got in a truck and headed to Canada. Now, somewhere in this process, my stomach got all jacked up. bubble guts, like sulfur, the whole deal. And um and I was in foul shape, and I realized how foul of a shape I was in officially, like right as we were about to cross the Canada border. And we were there to eat food, and I am like dying inside and outside. But we met the Canadian border cross lady. She was really cool. And she saw my pastor name badge, and like we had conversations about that, and that her kids actually went to a superhero VBS the year before, and just neat experience. And she recommended we go to a barbecue place. That was a local place called Beats Eats with a giant cow on the side. And yeah, we went on the local recommendation. Now the thing is, that sounded great, but knowing how bad my stomach was feeling, I was like, there's nothing I can put into my stomach that's going to go good right now. So I might as well eat something good and just prepare for the worst. That's what I did. And Beats Eats was a good little barbecue place. Very crude sense of humor. I'm gonna leave it there. They had a crude sense of humor. I ordered dill pickle poutine, which is cheese curds, French fries with gravy is generally poutine. And the dill pickle part is they put a dill pickle sauce on it, and it came with 2 giant fried pickles and popcorn chicken. There is no way, shape, or form that should have gone into my body as bad as I felt at that point in time. But I ate as much of it as I could without feeling like I'm dying. And then, we moved on. We went looking for different stuff. Like, we didn't have a big list. We wanted to get all season or all dressed chips, which was on me because I saw that on Letterkenny. And it's a Canadian exclusive chip that has all the flavors of chips put into one chip. So it's like salt and vinegar, ketchup, ranch, and something else that are the normal Canadian flavors, like all combined into one. There's like a whole episode of TV about it. I wanted to try it, and they're great. So we looked for those, and we got some of those. We went looking just to explore the town. We looked for if there were any nerdy shops open, and we found a game store called Kessel Run. And we went in, and it literally just like 3 friends setting up a D&D game. And it was 90% just miniature figures and stuff, but I did buy a pair of dice. And they did have some Pokemon stuff, but nothing I was going to purchase. But it was cool. They had a Gengar and Darth Vader on the outside. Just neat to find a little nerdy shop in Canada. We went to a Tim Hortons and got donuts and coffee. And overall, just kind of like did a little food tour. We looked around, saw some local artwork, and we drove on back. And, I read some of a book I was reading. We talked, and it was just a good experience. Then finally, the last day came. The last day was Batman. We did the Bat Family. We talked about the fact that, how we're supposed to treat each other as the family of God, and that how we treat each other as like wearing the symbol on our chest that shows who we're affiliated, not just shirts and stuff, but that. And then also part of the last day was I did, and I do this in air quotes, a dramatic reading of Can I Still Wear My Cape, with lots of sounds and voices and everything else. And then we told the kids at the end of the thing, all of you get a copy of Can I Still Wear My Cape too. And so just really got to bless them. Some kids made me some drawings, some talked to me, got a lot of good feedback from the parents and stuff like that. And then we kind of just I packed up all my stuff and we went back to Zach's house. And once we got there, everybody was literally kind of dead tired. And so I said, we said something. I was like, the one benefit of the fact that it's always freaking sunshine is that you're never late to play golf. That's like I was saying, because I don't play a lot of golf just because I'm tired, and by the end of the day, the sun's down. So sure enough, we looked and we found a golf course that was open late and driving range. So we went and hit some balls. And I also tried to manage my flight stuff because I was trying to change my flight because my flights were going to overlap and I was going to be late. As we were doing that, Zach took some time to give me some good golf instruction and help me to get my swing back because I haven't played in a year. It was a good time. Just genuinely standing around playing golf with somebody, they have a good connection with, and, giving me some instruction. And after just serving for a full week, it was nice just to hit some golf balls. And that was basically it. Came back, did laundry, threw threw all my stuff back together, got really packed up and ready to go. And it was also really weird just with the time frame. I barely talked to my kids and family this week because of the timing, just because by the time I was done and kind of getting settled, they were already in bed. Yeah. Oh, so also on the last day, Christian, the dude who was with the newspaper, came by and brought sandwiches for all the volunteers and sat through some of the Bible studies and stuff too. It was pretty cool. But that was, just kind of it for everything. Got packed up. I managed to leave the same time as Lewis. So we had to be at the airport at 5, which meant we left at 4:40. And we flew back. It was a flight back. I read the other 2 graphic novels I had downloaded and had 2 separate layovers of 2 hours each. And somewhere in there, I watched Delicious in Dungeon and started doing prep for a Doctor Who chapter, doing some church work while I was there and trying to prep stuff, and made it. Overall, it was a really great experience. It was great to be invited to go do something like that. And literally my only job was to have fun with kids, lead worship, and do Bible studies. The rest of it was just adventure and encouragement. And I had a really good time with it. There were plenty of times, my patience was tested with kids, or I was overly sleepy, or my entrails were trying to become my extrails, but that was literally just because of, the life and the travel and everything else. I had a good time, and one of the things that, we were getting asked was if we, somewhere in there we went for Mexican right after the last Bible study too, before, or after the last session before golf. I was asked if, this came up again, would I do it again? And, I definitely think I would, if it all worked out schedule wise and everything else. But yeah, it was just a good experience. I think in a lot of ways it encouraged an already engaged church base, because this was definitely not something that the church was used to doing in terms of dramatic thematic events on that level. And I feel like it maybe instilled a little more confidence in Zach's vision. Maybe Zach said his favorite thing, though, as I mentioned somewhere during my Q&A time on Wednesday night with the adults, that my pastoral staff gets 40 minutes of just preaching time. And he was excited that I said that to his adult crew, because apparently that's too long for them. And, I gave him some credence to be able to preach a little bit longer. Yeah, so that was the Sidekicks VBS. It was a good experience. the goal is that you want it to be a good time, but you also hope that you're doing kingdom work through the process and stuff that's going to have eternal weight and value. And I know I got encouraged. I know I was blessed. It was cool to see. It's not about me, but like seeing that Faith and Fandom has value beyond just what I initially did with it is good to me. And it always is a good reminder, because Faith and Fandom in a lot of ways got started doing a summer Bible camp. The first 8 chapters of book 1 were a summer Bible camp. And, it's like, this is how this got started, and I'm really grateful to see it. It got used as Bible material at Camp Grace. It got used as Bible material at Camp Gilead, Tapawingo. Like it's gotten used other places, but I'm grateful every time it does. And I got to see a lot of how things worked out with different churches culturally and in that different place, and I was grateful for it. So good opportunity overall. And before we wrap up, I do want to say thanks again to Zach for giving me the opportunity and giving me the chance to do this, for being a supporter forever, and being someone who's bold and uses his vision even when everybody can't see it in the initial run. So you've done a great job with it, man, and I'm praying for you and where God leads you and what he's going to do next in you, and for your family and everything on a whole. And I pray I get better at golf by the next time I see you too. Also just want to say thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. David Brooks, Jeff Weimer, Colin Sproles, Jamie Montgomery, the Coleman family, Jonathan Herman, Ron Petit, Gear Saber Cosplay, Scott Ward, Alicia Glenn, Candace Davis, Jay Sheed, Jason Crutchfield, Mike Perna, Todd Turner, Jonathan Jacobs, Zach Harris, who literally just been talking about, Caleb Grimm, Jeanette Skaggs, Jason Bullock, Christina Ray, Sarah Lewis, Patrick Gale, Rebecca Godlove, and Adam Davis. Thank y'all for supporting the way that you do. As I'm posting this, I'm just 2 days away from heading over to Heroes Con. It's my second biggest con ministry of the year in terms of per capita people, and one of the biggest and best shows in North Carolina, the country as well. And be praying for me if you are a praying peoples and you don't mind doing so, because it's a big deal and I'm looking forward to it. So thank y'all for taking time to listen. I hope God gives you great opportunities, and I hope that you have the ability to step into them when they arrive. And I'm grateful for mine. I hope you are for yours. And thanks for taking time to listen. And I hope to see you at a con real soon.